After being diagnosed with cancer, I found myself transmigrated into a male-oriented novel as the low-grade villain whom everyone despises. I became the sharpening stone and stepping stool on the protagonist's journey to godhood. The system informed me, as long as I maintain a positive favorability rating with those influential figures around the protagonist, I can return to reality and be reborn. In order to survive, I dedicated myself to learning the art of self-sacrifice. I honored my parents, showed love and support to my friends and brothers. I worked hard, studied seriously, helped others, and even secretly sponsored a large number of girls in remote mountainous areas who couldn't afford school. For over 20 years, I put my heart and soul into it. Then the protagonist appeared, and suddenly, every bad deed was attributed to me again. So, all those years of effort, were they for nothing? Finally, I just gave up and awaited death, but those who once wronged me began to feel regret. Chapter 1. Host. Please be aware that after the protagonist's car accident, everyone around you has dropped to the lowest favorability rating. If you cannot increase it within 3 days, your mission will be deemed a failure. The moment I saw off the police officers who came to investigate, the system's voice rang in my head. This was its third warning about the risk of mission failure. This time, it sounded particularly urgent. If the mission fails, in 1 month, I will meet the novel's original fate, organs hollowed out and body discarded as fish food. Facing this imminent threat of death, I hadn't even thought of a way to escape my doomed situation when a call from my father came through. Without waiting for an explanation, he launched into a furious tirade. Are you out of your mind? What the hell were you doing hitting Andrew? Look what's happened now. Your wife is pulling our company's funding because of him. Normally, when faced with my father's sudden outbursts, I would patiently explain things. But maybe because I had already explained myself several times to both my wife, Rose, and the police, this accusation felt especially exhausting. I managed a tired defense. I didn't hit him. If you didn't, then why would he say you did the moment he woke up? Are you suggesting he staged the accident himself? Do you even realize the extent of Andrew's injuries? Both legs shattered, with a chance of lifelong disability. No one would joke about that. If you had guts, why didn't you just kill him outright and save us from this mess? Any desire to keep explaining drained out of me. I let him continue his rant. Get yourself to Andrew and apologize. Beg for his forgiveness, or we're done. His anger hadn't subsided, as he muttered. Why did I deserve such a dim-witted son? I took a deep breath. Fine, I got it. Cut ties, so be it. I was beyond exhausted. My father, stubborn and authoritarian, had inherited the family business under the shadow of his own father. Yet he had no talent for business, and the company had steadily declined in his hands. Over the years, I had worn myself thin to preserve the family's reputation. If I had the choice, I wouldn't want a father like him. But he interpreted my agreement as a commitment to apologize to Andrew. Finally, somewhat satisfied, he added, then get to the hospital. Don't worry about pride or dignity. Whatever he asks of you, you do it. Apologize sincerely, and don't give Andrew any leverage over you. Understood. I remained silent. He continued with his old lecture about how weak I was as a man, unable to keep my wife, blaming me for her siding with an outsider. Blankly, I ended the call, but just as silence settled, another grating voice chimed in. Chapter 2. Alex, how dare you crush someone's legs like that, just because your family has money and connections? You think you can act like a tyrant? A young girl, delicate yet furious, stormed up to me, without giving me a chance to explain. She raised her hand and slapped me across the face. Look at you now. I know you can't stand seeing Andrew and Rose close, but they were lovers before you tore them apart. You made this bed. Now you have to lie in it. How could you hit Andrew? Do you really think that getting rid of him means you'll have a happy life with Rose? Get it through your head. Even if Andrew is disfigured, disabled, or dead, Rose will always love him, no matter what you do. She won't even look at you. The girl in front of me was Ava, someone I had raised as a little sister. At that moment, her eyes were filled with hatred as she looked at me. A pang shot through my chest, but the pain quickly dulled, turning to numbness. After all, I'd been through this scene too many times. The system was busy analyzing Ava's favorability score in my mind, calculating the odds of improving it, but I told it to shut up. Even if I managed to explain, to change Ava's opinion of me and raise her favorability, so what? Sooner or later, some new scheme would come from Andrew, the protagonist, and I'd be saddled with the blame all over again. I'd be forced to grovel for forgiveness, to explain myself all over again under the weight of everyone's misunderstandings and accusations. What's the point of this endless cycle? I'm just a supporting character, a villain, no matter how hard I try to win their favor. In the end, all I receive is suspicion, blame, and a heap of scapegoating. Take this ridiculous car accident. For example, it was Andrew who suddenly jumped in front of my car. I didn't have time to react before he was dragged underneath. Yet when he regained consciousness, He stubbornly insisted that I hit him on purpose. Nobody believes that he would sacrifice his own legs just to frame me. Everyone assumes I attacked him out of jealousy over his closeness to my wife. My parents think this. Ava, like a little sister to me, thinks this. Even my wife, Rose, thinks this. My father even ordered me to apologize at the hospital. Funny thing is, I had just come back from there. In fact, Rose had already slapped me in this exact spot at the hospital. She stood beside Andrew's hospital bed, her eyes red as she accused me of being a murderer, a twisted psycho. As soon as Andrew woke up and told her I had intentionally run him over, she didn't hesitate to call the police, accusing me of attempted murder. No regard for the fact that I was her husband of 3 years. Having seen Rose's furious, hateful face as if she wished I were dead, looking at Ava now only amused me. When she saw me smile, her anger flared even hotter. You're laughing, Alex. Do you feel no guilt at all? You crushed both of Andrew's legs. He's a living human being, and you can laugh. Do you have no respect for life? Chapter 3. Respect for life? Maybe that's a question for Andrew, a grown man, willing to risk his own body to falsely accuse me. If we're talking about a lack of respect for life, who's truly guilty here? But now, I was too tired to say anything. They were all convinced I was the villain, that I'd done it intentionally. No matter how many times I protested, they wouldn't believe me. Just like countless times before, I was done. Let it all fall apart. So, as Ava stood there on her high horse, I let go. Fine. It's all my fault. So, what do you want me to do to make it right? Give him my legs as compensation? Or is one pair of legs not enough? Maybe I should just throw in my life while I'm at it. To you all, a wretch like me shouldn't even be allowed to breathe. Right? Don't act so dramatic. Using death to threaten me. You're just a selfish coward who'd never dare go through with it. If you have any guts, just end it right here and now. I dare you. Ava's words were biting. Looking at her, I felt that all the care I'd shown her over the years had gone to waste. Ava was just an ungrateful brat. Selfish. Me. Does she even remember? Who was there when her parents abandoned her, mistreating her just because she was a girl? Who took her in and convinced our parents to adopt her? Who shielded her when her biological parents resurfaced years later, pressuring her to donate a kidney to a brother she barely knew? It was me. She used to rely on me, saying I was the best person in her world and that she'd repay me for the rest of her life. Now, she wouldn't even call me her brother. She used my name, Alex, just like anyone else. Even worse, she blindly believed I was this cruel villain without hearing a word of my side. Disappointment and disgust filled her gaze whenever she looked at me, and I'd had enough. Now, she stared at me with that same look, expecting me to back down. Her expression said it all. She thought I was all talk. Seeing her gloating, that smug look on her face, I felt a wave of bitterness rise within me. Hell, the mission was impossible anyway. In a month, I'd be brutally killed, my organs harvested. Compared to that slow death, I might as well take matters into my own hands. At least it'd be over in an instant. Close my eyes, and I wouldn't have to deal with any of this anymore. I grabbed the fruit knife from the coffee table. The blade glinted as it caught the light. Ava continued to mock me, fanning the flames. Don't think you'll scare me with this. If you don't have the guts to die, go to Andrew and apologize. Take responsibility for what you've done. I laughed. As you wish. Then, I drew the blade down hard across my neck. A warm surge of blood spurted out. Oddly, I felt no pain, only a sense of relief and release. Maybe this was for the best. Ava's eyes widened in shock, frozen as she stared at me. Seconds later, she screamed, You. Alex, somebody call an ambulance. Chapter 4. I drifted into darkness, my consciousness hazy and detached from my body. The system's frantic voice broke through the void. Host, what are you doing? Are you giving up on the mission? I was indifferent. The mission's impossible to complete anyway, and either way, I die. What difference does it make? It's all meaningless. The system fell silent. In fact, this world was the setting of a male-oriented novel. I'd even read it before. The protagonist was Andrew, playing the classic underdog who rises to success. Along his journey, he meets many benefactors who guide, support, and help him achieve his dreams of becoming a business tycoon. In my real life, I was a lot like Andrew, an orphan with no family, struggling as an ordinary wage earner. But unlike Andrew, who seemed to have allies everywhere, I had none. I was just another average office worker, pulling late nights and long hours, scolded by bosses, and taking the blame when things went wrong. I used to imagine what it'd be like if, like Andrew, I could meet a few benefactors. Maybe then I'd also have a shot at success. But luck wasn't on my side. Instead, due to years of drinking with clients, irregular hours, and stress, I was diagnosed with cancer at a young age. Stage 4, no less. Money for treatment wasn't even the issue. It was too advanced to bother with. I'd already given up hope. Yet, Just as I was about to die, fate decided to give me a chance after all. The system reached out to me, asking if I wanted to enter a book and complete a mission. If I succeeded, I'd be fully cured and regain my health in the real world. Who wouldn't grab at the chance? Of course, I accepted, but instead of becoming the protagonist, Andrew, I was placed in the role of the novel's villain, Alex. The system informed me that my mission was to help Alex, a despised antagonist, earn the favor of the important side characters around the protagonist. I needed to prevent Alex from meeting his original, brutal fate at the protagonist's hands. The protagonist had to stay morally pure. In the original story, Alex's end, being sold to a Southeast Asian scam ring and having his organs harvested, was too brutal, and readers had voiced their disapproval. That's why they chose me. Back then, I was naive, thinking that I just had to make the villain a good guy so the protagonist's team wouldn't hate him. Sounded simple enough. So, I eagerly agreed to the mission. Chapter 5. The system had me start from infancy, to make sure Alex lived a life completely different from the original. I figured that starting from scratch would make the mission relatively easy. I thought, as long as I didn't mess things up, there was no reason for a villain to end up despised and mutilated. So, I was an obedient child. Never cried or fussed, always acted mature beyond my age, and showed signs of intelligence early on. My parents were proud to have such an outstanding child and treated me well. I didn't disappoint them. I had none of the spoiled, arrogant behavior expected of a wealthy kid. At school, I was friendly and diligent. At home, I was respectful to my parents and looked after the neighborhood children. Soon enough, I became known as the model child that everyone admired. Whenever my name came up, people would rave. That Alex, what a well-behaved kid. If only my child could be like Alex, good grades, great temperament. I started to lose myself in all the praise. I even thought that maybe I didn't need to return to the real world. Here, I had a privileged family and loving parents. In my real life, I was just a lonely, sick office worker with no family. Whenever I thought this way, though, the system would remind me not to get too attached. This isn't your world, so don't get too involved. Besides, the original parents aren't the key people for the mission. The system insisted I work hard because the most crucial figure in the protagonist's circle of benefactors was Miss Lee, the heiress of an established, affluent family. You need to earn her favor and ensure she doesn't dislike you. That's the priority. At that time, while my family was wealthy, we were nowhere near the stature of the Lee family, whose legacy spanned generations. Under normal circumstances, I would have no reason to cross paths with them. But fate works in mysterious ways. When I was 10, I met Ava, a character in the novel who was fated to love the protagonist from afar. She had been abandoned by her parents, who favored her younger brother. In an amusement park, I was there with some classmates when I stumbled upon 6-year-old Ava, lost and crying, searching for her parents. According to the storyline, Ava would have been trafficked and sold to a mountain village, where she was to be a child bride to the protagonist. Later, when the protagonist made it to college, he brought his pitiful little sister with him to the city. But her bad fortune continued. After reuniting with her biological parents, she was forced to donate a kidney to the brother she barely knew. This left her feeling so inferior that she ultimately faded away from the world. I couldn't bear it, so I took her home and persuaded my parents to adopt her. Adopting Ava gave me an idea. I decided to support other girls in the mountains who couldn't afford an education. I put all my allowance into a charity and began sponsoring a girl in a poor village 2 years younger than me. Little did I know at the time, but this girl was destined to become the protagonist's key benefactor, Rose. Chapter 6. So, are you really planning to abandon the mission, even if it means you'll be erased permanently, never to return to the real world? The system's voice cut through my thoughts. I replied that I was, with the mission doomed. Returning to the real world would only lead to death anyway. What was the point in struggling anymore? Can you let go of your parents, your friends, everything you have in this world? What about Rose? Can you let go of her? Hearing the name, Rose, silenced me. There was a twisted fate between us, one I couldn't deny. In the beginning, I had no idea that the person I'd been sponsoring all those years was actually Rose. Back then, she went by the name Lara. In my 3rd year of college, the Lee Corporation decided to set up a special fund called the Elite Talent Program at my university to support outstanding but underprivileged students. Hoping to build a closer connection with the Lee family, I convinced my father to donate to the fund. When the fund was launched, the school selected outstanding students to receive the scholarship, and the Lee Corporation's chairman personally attended the award ceremony. Among the recipients was Lara, now known as Rose. At first glance, the chairman suspected she might be his long-lost granddaughter, who had been kidnapped for ransom by a former housekeeper. He quickly arranged for a DNA test, and sure enough, Lara was indeed a Lee. Thus, Lara changed her name to Rose and went from an impoverished student to the heiress of the prestigious Lee family. This revelation caused quite a stir at our school. It was only then that I realized I had already crossed paths with Rose, an important figure in my mission. It's impossible to deny that I was excited. The system also noted my unintended stroke of luck. Without my financial support, Rose would never have had the chance to leave her remote village and reunite with her family. In theory, with this debt of gratitude, Rose would be forever grateful to me, and her favorability should naturally be high. Indeed, Rose was deeply grateful to her benefactor, so much so that she even considered dedicating herself to him. Unfortunately, she thought that benefactor was Andrew, the protagonist. Chapter 7. Neither the system nor I anticipated that, the moment Andrew appeared, the credit for sponsoring Rose transferred to him. For some reason, when Andrew, who was a year behind Rose, enrolled, she became firmly convinced that he was her benefactor. Due to the buzz around her identity as the long-lost Lee heiress, this belief of hers brought Andrew attention as well. Everyone at University X knew that the Lee family's young lady was smitten with a poor boy from the mountains, guarding him like he was her most precious treasure. The system reassured me that this was probably an inevitable quirk of the storyline. Although your efforts have been attributed to the protagonist, at least Rose doesn't dislike you. After being welcomed back into the Lee family, Rose was introduced to high society at a grand banquet thrown by the Lees. Our Sioux family was among those invited, and since we had also contributed to the scholarship fund, Mr. Lee even specifically introduced Rose to me. He knew I was the student body president and asked me to look after his granddaughter at school. Rose politely called me Brother Alex and seemed quiet and demure. After that, she joined the student council, and we gradually became good friends. Her favorability rating toward me once peaked at 60%, even without the gratitude. You have a good relationship with her, just keep it that way. But as I spent time with Rose, I found myself falling for this intelligent and beautiful girl. She was resilient, driven, and filled with purpose. Even after rejoining the Lee family, she never let privilege go to her head. She focused on her studies, planning carefully for her future. Pursuing her became more than a mission. It became a personal desire. Chasing Rose seemed like the obvious choice, but as soon as I made my feelings known, her favorability dipped slightly. She told me she wasn't considering romance at the moment, and if she ever did, it would only be with Andrew. I knew that the protagonist's pride and sense of dignity made him reluctant to rely on Rose. He felt that being with her would make him look like he was living off her wealth. So despite his slight attraction to her, he didn't accept her feelings. The system warned me again not to get too attached and reminded me that failing the mission would trap me here forever. But I was blinded by my own desires. I began to think that staying here wouldn't be so bad. At least here, I had someone to love, a privileged background, and a supportive family, more happiness than I'd ever known in my real life. Chapter 8. Despite the system's disapproval, I persisted in pursuing Rose to earn her favor. For a time, her favorability did rise, but then a crisis hit our family. My father invested in the wrong project, causing a financial strain on the company. In a panic, he secretly approached the Lees, using proof of my past sponsorship of Rose as leverage. I have no idea what was discussed, but in the end, Rose agreed to marry me. This was the turning point that brought our relationship to rock bottom. I'll never forget our wedding night. After the guests had left, Rose tore off her veil and trashed the carefully decorated room. Alex, I didn't expect you to be so despicable. After I turned you down, you fabricated some story of past kindness. My grandfather fell for it, too, and, with my cousins pushing him, forced me into marrying you. You've ruined my life, do you understand that? At the time, I thought she meant her life was ruined because she'd lost any chance with Andrew. So I explained to her that I really was her benefactor. If she could fall in love with Andrew over that debt, why couldn't she love me? But Rose refused to believe a single word I said. She thought it was all a carefully crafted lie. 2 months into our marriage, at a Lee family gathering, I accompanied Rose back to the Lee's home. By chance, I overheard her cousins talking in a secluded corner. Only then did I understand what she meant by ruining her life. Rose was ambitious, talented, and far outshone her cousins. Her parents had suffered from her abduction. One had died. The other had lost their sanity, leaving her with only her grandfather's support in the family. She had intended to leverage her grandfather's guilt to secure resources, but her abilities threatened her cousins' positions, so they banded together against her. When my father approached the Lees, he unwittingly delivered the perfect opportunity to her cousins, who pushed for our marriage. I felt a deep sense of guilt and offered all my resources to support Rose in her rivalry with her cousins. In the following years, as she gradually regained power within the Lee Corporation, our relationship began to improve. But just when things were starting to look up, Andrew returned from overseas, launching his own company with business ties to the Lees. Once again, Rose reconnected with Andrew, and that's when my real nightmare began. Chapter 9. With Andrew back in my life, he began to live what one might call a calamitous existence. His usual vitamins were mysteriously swapped for hallucinogens. His car was tampered with on multiple occasions, And throughout his business ventures, he faced relentless setbacks, with his company on the brink of collapse several times. Each incident led back to one person, me. Of course, I hadn't actually done any of these things. It was clear that Andrew was orchestrating everything himself. Every time he harmed himself and blamed it on me, Rose would intervene, using her connections to compensate him. In just a year, Andrew's fledgling company had expanded significantly, becoming a rising star in the business world, capturing widespread attention. But in reality, if not for Rose's open and covert support, he'd still be struggling to secure investments. Each time she stepped in to help him, she would cut off my funding as a form of warning. Our relationship, which I had worked so hard to repair, sank to rock bottom once more. Over time, even my parents started to resent me. They saw me as a disgrace, a failure who could only bring misfortune. Having gone from the pride of the family to a worthless disappointment, the most painful betrayal, however, came from Ava, who, like in the original story, had fallen for Andrew. Her affection for him led to a deep-seated prejudice against me. If even they felt this way, Rose's hatred was even more understandable. Remembering how she slapped me in the hospital, told me to die, and called me a murderer, I chuckled bitterly. Fine. Forcing things won't bring any sweetness. I'm done trying. The system was silent. After a long pause, it finally said, "You've done good deeds for so many years. You've set up numerous foundations to aid disaster-stricken and impoverished regions. Although it hasn't changed the protagonist's group's view of you, you've gained a reputation among ordinary people who have no ties to the storyline. You've altered many lives. That reputation can be used to allow you to return to the real world and reclaim a healthy body." I'd already given up hope, but the system offered me an unexpected twist. Chapter 10. The system informed me, however, that this opportunity came with a price. My terminal illness from the real world would be transferred to this body, and as Alex, I would have to endure the pain of cancer until the very end. Suicide would not be an option. I accepted. After all, it was my own illness. If I could endure it in this world, I could return to reality, alive and healthy. Why wouldn't I go for it? The system promised to reappear on the day of my death. "Take care of yourself," it said before disappearing. As it left, I opened my eyes. Emerging from the darkness, the first thing I saw was Ava's tear-stained face. When she saw I was awake, she rushed over, sobbing, "Brother, I." Tears started streaming down her cheeks again as she choked on her words. "I didn't mean to push you to this. I never thought you'd actually go through with it. You almost didn't make it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things." My neck throbbed painfully, and her sobs grated on my nerves. "Could you please cry somewhere else? Your voice is irritating." Ava froze. I'd always been gentle and kind to her. I sympathized with her for being abandoned by her parents, and I worried about her being overly sensitive. Growing up in someone else's family, I would accompany her, help her make friends, tutor her, and try to win approval from her parents and teachers on her behalf. When her biological parents tricked her away to harvest a kidney for her brother, I was the one who reported it to the police, who stayed up with me for 3 days searching until we found her and sent those despicable people to prison. But when Andrew slandered me, she'd merely said, "Brother, what happened to you? You look so ugly," with all this jealousy toward Andrew. When I married Rose, she blamed me for forcing Andrew to leave the country. "It's all your fault, pushing Rose and Andrew apart. Are you that desperate for a woman? You had to steal from Andrew." She would accuse me of being petty and vindictive, of being a vicious excuse for a man. She never held back on her words or tone, regardless of how hurtful they were. But now, after I told her she was annoying, her eyes turned red, and she burst into tears. Just then, the doctor entered the room, frowning. "The patient needs rest, ma'am. Please keep it down." Ava finally fell silent. The doctor glanced around the room and settled his gaze on Ava. "Are you the patient's family?" Ava said yes, while I said no. She looked at me in disbelief, her eyes showing a hint of hurt. The doctor looked from her to me. I could sense he'd likely discovered my cancer, so I said calmly, "Please, just talk to me directly. I'm aware of my condition." He held my gaze for a few seconds, then sighed and handed me a report. "Stage 4 liver cancer. There's not much time left." I nodded. Perhaps I seemed too calm, for the doctor couldn't resist adding, "Try to stay positive. Eat whatever you like and focus on comfort. Hospice care can help manage the pain." There was genuine sympathy in his voice. It had been a long time since I'd felt such kindness from anyone around me. I accepted his advice and thanked him. Chapter 11. But Ava let out a scream. "Doctor, what are you talking about? Terminal liver cancer? No, that can't be possible." She snatched the CT report from my hands. Seeing the unmistakable CA marking at the bottom, her face fell apart as she looked back at the doctor. "This isn't real, is it?" The doctor looked at her sympathetically. "Please accept my condolences." Then he nodded at me and left the room. Ava's face was as pale as a ghost. Her lips trembled, and after a long pause, She slapped herself hard across the face. What have I done? You're dying of cancer, and I was still pushing you to your death. I'm a monster, brother. I'm sorry, I sneered. Oh, no need to apologize. I'm the villain you always said I was, constantly scheming against your beloved Andrew. Now that my suicide attempt failed, Karma stepped in to make sure I die from a terminal illness. She lunged forward, pressing her hand over my mouth. Please, stop saying that. I'll go find Sister Rose. Her eyes lit up. Yes, Sister Rose. She's your wife. She should be here with you, taking care of you. I watched, bemused, as she frantically took out her phone and dialed Rose's number. She put it on speaker. After a moment, Rose's calm voice came through the line. Hello, Ava. The second Ava heard her voice, she broke into sobs. Rose, please, can you come see my brother? Rose went silent, oblivious. Ava continued. He cut himself, and he lost so much blood. I brought him to the hospital, and the doctors say he has cancer, that he doesn't have much time left. Please, can you come take care of him? Rose let out a cold laugh. Ava, aren't you the one who hates your brother's hypocritical, toxic nature? Why are you joining him in trying to deceive me now? If he thinks he can fake an illness to dodge responsibility, he's got another thing coming. You tell him that I'm hiring the best legal team to seek justice for Andrew. He can rot in prison for the rest of his life. Ava was dumbstruck. No, I'm not lying to you. Fine, let's say it's true. Rose cut her off, her voice laced with malice. Alex has cancer. Then finally, justice is served. It's his punishment for all the harm he's caused. With that, she hung up. Ava stared at the phone in shock. How could this happen? I scoffed at her attempt to appear compassionate. You've always known how Rose feels about me. Don't pretend now. You probably wanted me to hear her say all that, didn't you? And you call me the cruel one, Ava. But you're just as heartless. She clutched her head, crying out. No, I'm not. I didn't mean it like that. I really wanted her to come. She's your wife. How could she abandon you like this? But wait, there's still Mom and Dad. She reached out to hold my hand. Brother, it's okay. If Rose won't come, then we still have Mom and Dad. I pulled my hand away from her. Chapter 12. A flash of hurt crossed Ava's face, but she quickly forced herself to be strong. It's okay, brother. Don't worry. I'll go get Mom and Dad. I was utterly exhausted. Could you please leave? I don't want to see Rose, my parents, or even you. Can I just die in peace? Tears started streaming down Ava's already swollen eyes. She didn't dare say anything more, quietly arranging for a nurse to stay with me before she stepped outside. Because of the blood loss, my head was dizzy, and soon enough, I drifted into unconsciousness again. When I awoke, it was to the sound of raised voices. I opened my eyes to find my father and Ava arguing at my bedside, while my mother tried to calm them down. So he tried to pull a stunt with this suicide business, and now Rose is furious. Our company's funding chain has completely collapsed, and he's here, still shamelessly sleeping in the hospital. Doesn't care at all, does he? Ava anxiously tried to hold him back. Dad, my brother is seriously ill. He's not faking it. Please, calm down. My father turned to me, his face red with rage. Alex, why didn't you just die and spare us the mess? Rose is out for blood, not only cutting off our funds but threatening to swallow the whole Sue family. You've ruined everything, you damn jinx of a son. Seeing that I was awake, he glared at me. The Sue family's downfall is on you. How did I end up with a cursed son like you? My mother, noticing I was awake, began to cry. Son, you foolish boy, how could you use suicide to threaten Rose? She responds better to softness, not force. Now she's not only cut off our funds but taken several major contracts from the company. Your father's just overwhelmed with anger. Listen to me, go apologize to Andrew. Beg Rose to show us some mercy for the sake of your marriage. Ava raised her voice in protest. Begging won't help. Rose has no conscience. My brother is deathly ill, and she's still cursing him. We don't need her. My father slapped her hard across the face. You're just an adopted child. Who are you to speak up here? Do you realize the only reason you're eating well and living comfortably is because of the Sue family? If the Sue family falls, who do you think you are? Ava covered her face, looking at him in disbelief. My mother, seemingly deaf to Ava's plight, continued to cry as she turned back to me. Don't leave us old and helpless. Everything we do is for you. The Sue family will eventually be yours. We're only asking you to apologize to Rose. Once the company stabilizes, your father and I will make it up to you. Okay, I chuckled. I already cut ties with you. My mother's crying stopped short, and my father's glare intensified. What did you just say? Chapter 13. I looked at the man I had called Dad for over 20 years. You told me that if I didn't apologize, you'd disown me. Well, here we are. You. His finger shook as he pointed at me. Ungrateful son. Traitor. Ungrateful. Traitor. I scoffed. Finally fed up. I'm tired. I've had enough. Every time you refuse to listen. Remember that project a few years ago? The one that caused the company's cash flow crisis? I warned you not to invest in it, didn't I? And last year, you fired our top 2 sales champions, and they took our biggest clients with them to our competitors. And how about taking HR's advice to improve leadership, only to drive away so many loyal employees? You've run this company your whole life, yet you don't seem to understand that the moment a company starts tearing itself apart from the inside, it's already on the path to collapse. His face turned a dangerous shade of purple. I continued, unyielding. Bankruptcy is your destiny, not mine. Let's be clear, the Sue family's failure is because of you, not me. Stop trying to pin your failures on me. You, how dare you? I'm your father. You don't speak to me like this. No, you're not my father. He lunged at me in a fit of rage, and my mother didn't try to stop him. It was Ava who finally jumped in, blocking him and shouting, "Don't hit him, Dad. My brother has cancer. It's terminal. It's untreatable." Her words froze him in place, and my mother looked equally stunned. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice faltering. Ava covered her face and began sobbing. "How could things turn out like this? Mom, Dad, how can you be so cruel to him? He's dying. He has late-stage liver cancer. He can't be cured." My mother's face went pale, and she fainted with a thud. My father's breath came in heavy, disbelieving gasps. But disbelief soon turned into acceptance as they left the room with Ava to speak to the doctor, returning with faces of grim realization. The men who had just been cursing me, praying for my death, came back looking shattered, shoulders hunched. "As you wished. I'll soon be dead and out of your sight. No longer an embarrassment or a failure." His eyes were rimmed with red, and he opened his mouth to say something but couldn't find the words. After a moment, my mother came to, and when she saw me, she tried to rush forward, only to be blocked by the hospital staff. "This room is far too noisy," the doctor scolded as he entered. "Other patients have been complaining. Are you even his real family? How many times do we have to tell you that he needs peace and quiet? Or do you want him to die even faster?" My mother seemed to snap back to reality, clutching the doctor's sleeve tightly. "He's really terminal. This can't be true, right? He's only 28. How can he already be at the final stage? Please, save him, save him." Before the doctor could respond, I spoke up. "Save me? What for? When I slit my throat, you wanted me to apologize to Andrew. If I survived, would I just be a puppet to serve you two for the rest of my life?" My mother's face turned deathly pale, unable to reply. Chapter 14. Now that I had cancer, it seemed like Ava and my parents had suddenly found a conscience. They finally started believing that I wasn't the type of person to harm Andrew. They even decided to help me clear my name. But it was far too late. Where were they when I needed support? I didn't need them now. I could clear my own name if that was what I wanted. There were still things like surveillance footage and dashcams in this world. The day Andrew jumped in front of my car, getting caught beneath it, I was in shock. After I got him to the hospital, I knew this setup would eventually be pinned on me. So I immediately went back to retrieve the car's dashcam footage. But someone had tampered with it, disconnecting the dashcam completely, leaving nothing recorded. The police retrieved footage from the parking lot, but I also managed to track down another car owner who had parked nearby and gotten footage of the incident. I just hadn't had the chance to submit it to the police before I let my emotions get the best of me and slit my throat. Now that I was awake again, I made the call, reporting that someone had tried to frame me for attempted murder. So, my parents and Ava could only stand by, watching as the police entered my hospital room to hear my statement. I recounted the events clearly, handing over a USB drive. My dashcam was tampered with, but other cars captured the incident. If the parking lot footage doesn't yield anything, this should suffice as evidence. The officer in charge nodded thoughtfully as he took the evidence. "I'll make sure you get justice." After the police left, my father awkwardly said, "Andrew is cunning. I heard Rose hired a legal team to help him with his case. Maybe I should." Before he could finish, there was a knock on the door. 3 young men entered my hospital room, full of energy and confidence. The one leading them extended his hand to me. "Mr. Sue, it's an honor. I'm Martin, one of the students you sponsored. I graduated from XX Law School, and it's my privilege to assist you in any way I can." The other 2 stepped forward, excitedly. "We're also students you supported. We all graduated from the same law school and now work at Hean Law Firm. We're fully licensed lawyers, and Martin here is a senior partner. With him on your side, your case will be in excellent hands." My father's face turned a mix of red and green. Chapter 15. With Martin handling things, I felt at ease, knowing that as long as I died here, I would return to my world. I refused all treatment, not even palliative care. This hastened my decline. Ava and my parents took turns pleading with me to seek treatment, but I ignored them. Their cries grated on my nerves, so I asked Martin to arrange for guards to keep them out. While that kept my family away, it didn't deter Rose, Martin acted quickly. He released my evidence to the public before the police, rallying public opinion against Andrew. He also uncovered other illegal activities connected to Andrew based on the information I provided. For instance, Andrew's company had ties with Southeast Asian scam syndicates, hinting at money laundering. Since he was so close to the Lee family, even Rose was dragged into the mess. She ended up getting questioned by the authorities multiple times. After one such session, she came looking for me. It was the first time she'd visited me since I was admitted. By now, nearly a month had passed since Andrew's staged accident. In that short time, everything had changed. Maybe it was because I had resolved to let go of this world, but when I saw Rose again, I felt nothing. Even she seemed taken aback by my appearance. You look so thin now." Then, as if realizing something, she asked urgently, "Ava was telling the truth. You really have cancer?" Her face was filled with disbelief. I couldn't help but feel exasperated. I'd seen that same shocked expression on every single person's face, as if I were some immortal villain who didn't deserve a disease. "What do you want?" I didn't care to engage in small talk. Rose was still in shock. How did this happen? Seeing her at a loss for words, I signaled to the nurse to show her out. Rose quickly spoke up. "Don't make me leave. I have something to discuss with you." I waved my hand, and the nurse stepped aside. She lowered her gaze, avoiding my eyes, her voice hesitant. "Now I know that it wasn't you who did all that. I wronged you. I'm sorry. I've also restored your family's funds." I cut her off. "If that's all you have to say, you can leave." Rose's face fell. She closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing herself, then spoke in a pleading tone. "Andrew changed my life. He sponsored me, giving me a chance at a new destiny. He's my savior. Can't you, for my sake, let him go just this once?" Chapter 16. Rose's words made it clear. She was asking me to let go of Andrew. Looking at her, I couldn't help but find it laughable. Once, I admired her for her intelligence and resilience. Now, I only saw her foolishness. Originally, I reported Andrew out of personal grievances, but now that Martin had uncovered his company's illegal activities, it was no longer just about me. Even if I dropped the charges, the authorities wouldn't. I chuckled. "You've been close to Andrew for so long. Don't you know anything about his background?" A hint of embarrassment crossed Rose's face. "Close? Don't make it sound so scandalous. I may be married, but I wouldn't do anything inappropriate with him." I cut her off. "He's a poor kid from the mountains. He only got through school by leeching off his 3 sisters. Just how naive are you to believe that he was the one who funded your education?" Rose froze, as if this possibility had never even occurred to her. I ignored her, signaling the nurse to show her out. Within days, I heard from Martin that the Lee Corporation had started to aggressively crush Andrew's business. With the police investigation underway, his company quickly collapsed. Rose discovered that Andrew had tricked her with a few fake bank drafts to make it look like he was her benefactor. Martin informed me Andrew had been clever enough not to outright claim he was her sponsor. Instead, he'd staged a coincidental encounter, where a few forged drafts accidentally fell in front of Rose. The simple trick had fooled her for years. Enraged by her own foolishness, Rose went after Andrew ruthlessly. But Andrew, always cautious, had managed to siphon funds from his investors and fled to Southeast Asia before his company fully went under. Of course, if he could run, it proved that his compound fractures from my supposed attack were just an act. Rose, however, wasn't about to let this go. Using her connections, she cut off his escape route and had him dragged back. Before handing him over to the authorities, she even brought him to see me, saying she wanted him to kneel and beg for forgiveness. I didn't see them. None of this mattered to me anymore. Later, Martin told me that when Rose realized I wouldn't meet them, she turned her fury on Andrew. She ran him over with her car, breaking his legs for real, and then delivered him to the police. The Lee family hushed up the incident, but Rose's brutal behavior had unsettled the family. As Martin peeled an apple for me, he remarked, "Mr. Sue, their reckoning is only beginning." I told him not to bother with the apple. I couldn't stomach anything anymore. Aside from painkillers, I refused any treatment, so my condition deteriorated rapidly. I was almost constantly drowsy, rarely fully awake, and even when I was, I felt nauseous, my bones aching. Martin's eyes reddened as he whispered, "Can't you hold on just a little longer, just until you see their downfall?" I shook my head. "It's fine. You all can witness it for me. I'll go ahead." He gripped the apple, his throat tightening, unable to speak. Chapter 17. In my final days, I drifted in and out of consciousness. Occasionally, I would awaken enough to hear what was happening around me, but I was too weak to think, too tired to care. I heard Ava's soft sobs, my father's murmurs of regret, and my mother's breakdowns. Anne. I thought I heard someone kneeling by my bed, slapping themselves and begging for forgiveness, promising to make it up to me in the next life. My eyelids fluttered, but I couldn't summon the strength to speak. If I could, I would have said, please, stay as far away as possible. I didn't know how much time passed after that. Then the system's voice stirred me awake. Everything is over. It's time for you to go back. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in my small rented apartment. The air conditioner hummed softly, blowing lukewarm air. I threw off the covers, ran to the bathroom, and looked at the reflection of my old, familiar face in the mirror. I was back. I had truly returned. My phone buzzed unexpectedly. I picked it up out of habit. Hello. Hello. May I speak with Mr. Pablo Su? I was momentarily stunned. Pablo, that was my name in the real world. It took a second to adjust to hearing it again. Yes, this is he. Mr. Su. We're calling from First People's Hospital's Oncology Department. It appears your report was accidentally mixed up with another patient's. We apologize sincerely. You are not sick. This was an error caused by one of our interns who input the information incorrectly. I stepped out of the bathroom and pulled open the curtains, welcoming the sunlight. Life was good. I had a chance to return to a simple, ordinary life. Just then, the system spoke up again. When you passed away, everyone's favorability toward you reached its peak. You successfully altered Alex's fate. Now, he's become a cherished memory for everyone, a white moonlight in their lives. The mission is complete. You have the chance to return and witness their outcomes, or even to start anew in that world. Do you want to go back? I chuckled. Starting over there? No, thank you. I just want to live in the present. But the idea of seeing what became of them intrigued me. So the system allowed me to return in spirit to witness their fates. After I passed, my parents seemed to lose their will. They abandoned the company and left it in Ava's hands, choosing instead to join a monastery. As for Ava, after her biological parents were released from prison, they came looking for her again. With no one to warn her or protect her this time, she was foolish enough to trust them. They took her to a private hospital and harvested one of her kidneys. She eventually sought revenge, but her health was never the same. Bedridden for most of her life, she died at 40 from kidney failure. Then there was Rose and Andrew. Andrew lost his legs due to Rose's revenge and spent 7 or 8 years in prison, festering with resentment. Once released, he threw everything he had into seeking revenge. One of Andrew's gang members eventually kidnapped Rose. She was tortured for days on end. When the Lee family finally rescued her, she was left crippled, her legs shattered, and her mind on the brink of madness. She spent her days muttering about retribution. As for Andrew's gang, the police eventually hunted them down, killing them on the spot. Rose was sent to a nursing home. Her 2 cousins reclaimed their hold on the family, and after her grandfather passed, they ignored her entirely. Rose eventually passed away in a harsh winter, her body never quite recovering. They said she died calling out my name. The system informed me. You could speak to her soul. She truly spent the rest of her life repenting. I responded. Not all sins can be forgiven. I think it's time for me to move on. The system paused. Are you sure you don't want to live a new life there, in your original world? You were just an ordinary orphan. Here, you'd have a wealthy family and endless resources. This time, Andrew wouldn't be around. I interrupted. Ordinary life sounds just fine. I shouldn't look down on my original world because that's where the real me belongs. I had lost myself and indulged in that other world. But now, I finally understood, there's nothing wrong with living a simple, unremarkable life.